Let me know when you can. Let me know when you can see that, Chuck.
Yep, we're good.
All right. So this is going to be part 3 of our Creating RID Deliverables webinar series. In the previous webinars, we went over how to create a lot of the model output files. So the things that we asked for RID for alignments and for terrain files. This webinar is going to be a little bit less about the actual process and more just some helpful things that I found that have just things that I've learned about the software, different things that might help you in creating these deliverables a little bit faster and a little bit more accurately. This is all going to be live, so you can ask questions with the chat whenever you want, really. And Chuck will be monitoring that. And if we find a good stop to spot, we can answer any questions that you might have. The first thing that I wanted to show is some of the guidance that we have on our SharePoint site, and try to just clean up some of the common questions that we get. Sometimes it is documented on our SharePoint site. So this is the homepage of the new development guide. If we scroll down, there is an area for reference information documents, which we are still adding to this page, but getting more detailed information about exactly what to go through at, preliminary plans, FPC, and letting plans. But one of the pages that is pretty complete is this RID workflows. And so along with the webinars that are on the GLBUG YouTube site, the RID workflows that are here, we have a nice little flow chart and also a video on how to create these deliverables. So a lot of the same information that we've gone through in these webinars. One of the things that we did just add though recently is this section, some notes on the model output files and actually what's required for the surface deliverables. So one of the things that we get questions on somewhat frequently is what's required for the subsurface features. And so we took a screenshot here and tried to make it a little more clear about what it is that we're asking for with the bottom surface deliverables. And so one of the big things is that we never really require the subsurface for any kind of milling and resurfacing job. Even if you are doing profile milling or something like that, we only ask for the top surface for milling and resurfacing jobs. And so this bottom surface, it really only applies to full reconstruct areas. And even in a full reconstruct area, we only really want, I guess, what's under the road base. And then this daylighting slope here. And it's only required when this surface is not at a constant offset from your top surface. So for instance, here we would have like a 4% shoulder slope. Well, the subbase is still daylighting out at a 2% slope. And so it's not a constant offset from that top surface. And so we would require it in this type of situation. And then if you look at R107, the standard for super elevation, this slope here specifically can be, I wouldn't say tricky to model, but you have to understand the standards pretty well. And it is going to be, different than the top surface. If you have driveways and stuff like that over here on the end, you can turn on there's a property of the surface template for create linear features, I think is what it is. But we don't require it for driveways. If you have a big intersection where you're reconstructing the entire intersection, you would probably want to change that surface template setting to create those lines for the bottom surface. But any driveways or even small intersection approaches, stuff outside the roadbed, you really don't need to include that for that subsurface deliverable. It's just what's under the roadbed. Even this subbase under the sidewalk, it's a constant offset from the top of the sidewalk. And so it's very easy for contractors and surveyors to just offset that top surface to the depth required. So that's one of the questions we get. And I don't want people to spend too much time trying to create these deliverables when maybe they don't even have to on a project, depending on what it is. So SharePoint site, it's a great resource, this RID workflows page. kind of walks through again a lot of the stuff that we've covered in these webinars. The next things that I wanted to cover is just some tips for things that I've learned, some different ways that you can create that the model output files, the XML files of the surface and subsurface, mostly for the surface here. The first thing that I wanted people to know, and we've covered this in the webinar, but it's just a good reminder, the sheet view filters are something that's really, really helpful for getting the level display how you want. So if I come up to the drawing, actually it's MDOT Road Tools, we have a button here for sheet view filters. And basically what the sheet view filters do is it categorizes the levels into certain groups. And it can, I use these filters all the time, even for just like setting up my plan sheets for like removal, construction, alignment, things like that. If I come to my level display, I can change this to filters. And let's say we just want to see the levels that typically appear on a construction sheet. We can select that, and basically us and engineering support, we decide which levels go into these filters. And so if you don't use the levels how we expect people to, then you know, it's not necessarily going to be perfect, but it gets you really, really close to what you're looking for. In this case, I want all of the 3D top surface lines. So if I do that, now we get some more break lines, everything that's typically a part of the top surface that, you know, it's not necessarily shown in the plans on the construction sheet, but we get these aggregate lines, we get the slope break lines, basically anything that's typically a part of the top surface. One thing that does always get me is you need to change this back to levels to get back to your normal display. I always forget to do that, but that's just one handy tool, just in general, something that's in the workspace that you should all have access to. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is getting the exterior, or another thing I wanted to talk about is getting the exterior boundary and voids for a surface. So if I just select all of these elements and come to my terrain tools, create terrain from elements, it does, I don't know why it does this, but it references in all the 2D versions of these corridors. And I don't particularly like that the software does that. But I'm going to add all of those elements as break lines. And I'm going to turn off all of these 2D corridors. And I didn't give this a feature definition, so that's why it's showing up red here. But what I wanted to show is the triangles and all of these exterior triangles. And it can take a long time to clean these up, especially on a big project. You do have some different options for the triangulation settings, which really any of these, there's not like an MDOT standard or anything. I would say just pick them and see what they do. So if we change it to sliver, it removes some of the edges. Me personally, I like to use the max triangle length, max edge length, and this will change. 50 feet is usually a good number, but you can play around with this and you can see just how much tighter it is. But even now, you still have to do quite a bit of work to come and check all these areas, delete all these triangles on the outside. And so what I wanted to show first here is a tool to create a surface from a design mesh. So if I select these, what a design mesh is to Bentley products or to Open Roads Designer is all of these XS levels. So let me find one that's actually going to display here, like for, we'll do OGDC. So all of these little cross section, you know, the volume meshes, that's what a design mesh is essentially. And there's a way to create a surface from the top surface design meshes, and it'll even create a boundary for you around that terrain. So if we come up here to additional methods, the tool is create terrain model from design meshes. And the only reason I ever run this tool is just to get the exterior boundary of my models so that I don't have to spend a ton of time cleaning up triangles. If I run that command, I just fill out the dialog box here, and I've actually already filled it out in this file, so that's why it's already done. But I want to get the top surface of all of my models, and it's going to grab the top surface, whether the level is displayed or not. So it's going to grab everything that's in this file or referenced into it. So I don't have any design meshes turned on right now, but it's still going to find the top of all of them. I gave it a feature definition of P boundary. Important to check these boxes, rule exterior and rule voids. And I'm putting it on the feature definition of P corridor boundary clip line. Once you have the dialog box filled out, you just click through the prompts. And this does take a little bit of time. This is a pretty small model that I have here just for demonstration purposes, so it should find it pretty quickly. But if you have a really big file, this can take, you know, five minutes or so. Should be a lot faster than that right now for this demonstration. But what it's doing is it's looking at all of the top surface meshes, and if they're on top, it's grabbing that top mesh and it's going to end up creating a terrain model for me. But it also creates a boundary that's going to follow exactly along my slope stake line, and I can use that to add a boundary to my terrain so that I don't have to clean up triangles. Now, it doesn't do a perfect job, so there is still some cleanup here that you have to do. Real quick, I'm going to change my level display just so you can see what it did. I'm going to turn off all of my corridors, and what it did is we have a terrain model, a couple of terrain models that it found here, and we also have a exterior boundary, and you can see all of this exterior boundary stuff. You know, it still requires a little bit of cleanup, but I'll show you what I do to do that. This terrain model, we don't even care about. I'm just going to delete it out of the file. The only reason I ran this command is just so I don't have to clean up triangles. So what I like to do is I will just copy this using AccuDraw, some distance that I'm going to remember. I'll copy it 5,000 feet to the right. And then I'm going to delete all of this junk because it finds, you know, little imperfections in the model that it's, you know, minuscule little things that it doesn't know how to deal with. But it does do a pretty good job of just finding the overall exterior boundary. You may have to come in, I'm going to move this back over 5,000 feet and turn back on all of my 3D models. And now usually what I'll do is I'll just go around the end looking for any kind of imperfections where there are times when it might jump in slightly, like here, you see there's something going on. We can just edit this just like a regular microstation element. So delete vertex and just get rid of those vertexes so that it follows exactly along my slope stake line. And so this is just an alternative, I guess, for to cleaning up triangles manually. Maybe a little bit less work, still some manual cleanup, but I kind of prefer things to do it this way. Now what you would do is create your terrain model, whatever method you want, graphical filter or create from elements. And now you have your boundary to add. And you don't have to clean up the triangles. It's just going to go, you know, follow exactly along this boundary. It will also find voids, which it didn't in this case. I will show you what I do to create void features. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this, and we'll show you what the voids do as well. So these two models, they don't actually touch each other, but for this example, we will pretend like basically this is going to be a hole in the terrain model, and we don't want it to triangulate across this big infield area of this ramp. So if the models do, I guess, connect to one another that create design meshes, it will find the void and it will add that as a shape. But you can also create them manually. Again, this is kind of the same, I guess, process is creating that exterior boundary. I'm going to grab all the lines that I want to make up that infield. And again, I'm just going to copy this like 5,000 feet to the right so that it's some distance that I know away, that I can move it back to where it belongs. If you do use display rules in your terrains, you're going to, or in your templates, you're going to see that some of these line strings are connected. It's one line since they all have the same name in your template. And so we do actually have to drop all of these elements after we copy them over. I just keep the complex option checked here, and that will separate them into individual lines rather than lines being connected by gaps, which is kind of nice. And then we're just going to manually create the shape for the area that we want to be our void. We'll just pretend like these things connect right here. So a lot of manual microstation work, just getting our kind of infield area. Once it is all connected, we're going to want to turn this into a complex shape and move it back to where it belongs. So probably want to be maybe a little more precise than I'm being, just trying to be quick about getting this back over so you can see what the void features do, because you will need to add them if you have like a loop ramp that's fully enclosed or something like that. I'm going to go ahead and make this a complex shape, set it to automatic. Hopefully this thing is in fact enclosed, and it is. And I will move that back over 5,000 feet to the left. Delete this out. And I'll show you what this void feature does. So basically this shape that I drew, it's the area that I don't want to triangulate in the infield. I'm going to go ahead and actually make a terrain from a graphical filter. I'm going to do the top surface again. We showed how to do this in the previous webinars, the different options that you have for making these terrain models. I'm not going to append it. No triangulation option. Data point to complete. So here we have this big terrain model that's triangulating across this infield area, which we do not want. And so we're going to add that shape that we just drew as a void, and we'll see how this terrain model reacts. Here are my terrain tools. I can add a feature, and I already have this set to void. It's asking us what terrain do we want to add it to. It's the one I just created. And I'm going to add that boundary, and I'm all done. So I can right click to complete. It's a void feature, and you'll see that it basically just cuts a hole in the terrain model. So this is helpful when you have infield areas like this that you don't want to triangulate across. It comes in a lot with like loop ramps or areas where, you know, like this, where you have this loop ramp might be connected to the outer ramp that comes around it. And so in addition to adding the boundary, you can add the void. Like I said before, in this additional method, create terrain model from design meshes, if this were enclosed, it would find that and you would be able to use that as your void rather than creating it manually, kind of how I just did. One thing that did change with 10.12 though is you can actually delete triangles that are interior, and it's something that you actually have to be careful about. So if I go to my terrain editing tools, if I can find where they are, edit model. So if I click this terrain, we used to not be able to delete triangles that were inside, but we can now. And so just be aware of that. And be careful about, you know, I want to delete all these triangles. You don't want to swipe too far and delete triangles that you didn't intend to delete. So Bentley made that change. I think it's a good change overall, because there are times when you want to delete triangles that are inside of the terrain model, but you do just have to be careful with it, because you can inadvertently delete out stuff that you didn't intend to. That was really the only other things that I had. There was one more thing that I wanted to share, unrelated to RID, kind of, yeah, not really related to RID, but a little bit. But we can stop here and ask any RID specific questions.
Hey, Luke, I got a question.
Yep.
You guys have been, you have 2023, don't you?
I do, yeah, not the rest of MDOT, but we're working on testing it and getting our workspace ready right now.
Is it true in 2023 when we clean up triangles the old way that we no longer have to disable the what's the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, that's actually true in 1012 and in 2023. So I just edited some triangles here. You used to have to go into the properties and
Right.
remove the rule, or there is a lock icon. I forget, but
It's the first one,
yeah,
that one.
deactivate rule. You used to have to do this, and you no longer have to. So I'm using 2022 release 3 right now, the same version that is on our website, our
Right.
production version at the moment. And yeah, you no longer have to do that even now. This was, I think, the first version where they changed that. You can delete interior triangles, and yes, you no longer have to deactivate the rule how you used to.
Okay, so you don't have to also create a outline or border and then bring it in as a boundary.
Say that again.
So you're saying even in 1012 now, when we clean up the triangles, we no longer have to deactivate the rule. And once we clean up the triangles, we don't have to add a boundary to it?
But you do need to add the boundary to it still. I didn't show that here. I believe you need to add a boundary to it. I don't think it remembers. What I would say the best thing to do is to export this out to an XML file and bring it back in and make sure that it doesn't triangulate across these areas. I do. We have a question in the chat. When you delete those triangles, is that the same as adding a void? I'm not exactly sure, and we can check this out here. So these triangles here that I just deleted, there's no void feature here. I just deleted the triangles, and I'm not sure what'll happen if I send it to an XML and bring it back in. If it'll try to retriangulate across these areas. So I'm going to test it here. I'm going to send this out to a land XML file, export triangles only, and I'll just put it in my ctemp folder. I'll just put it on my desktop. I'm struggling with Windows 11. Things are just a little bit different than I'm used to. Hey, RID webinar. This is where I'm working. So I'll just keep the default name, terrain model elements. And then, do I want to delete this? I can always go back if we need it. I'm going to delete it, and I'm going to import from my desktop, RID webinar, all files. I just want to see if it triangulates in this infield area when I bring it back in. Build, I'll put this on triangles, import terrain only, bring it in. And yes, it did not triangulate across here. So that's basically the main thing to check for, is in that XML file. When you export it out, bring it back in, and make sure that it's still triangulating right around your boundary. Here, I never added a boundary to it, so that's why we have these exterior triangles. But yeah, James, to answer your question in the chat, it looks like if you just delete the interior triangles, you don't actually need to add that void feature. So that might be an even easier option. Even in here, imagine if this loop ramp was fully enclosed, we could just edit the model and get rid of what we want. All right, any other questions?
So you could put them in the chat, or you could try the raise hand thing. Oh, there's one. All right, go ahead, Michelle.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, cool. So, I have a lot of people asking me about the development guide website. If we just wanted to say how to get into that again.
Yeah, so it's still something we're working on with consultants, but I think we have it pretty much nailed down. What I would say is send an email to, probably the easiest way is to just send an email to MDOT-engineering support training at michigan.gov and request access to the development guide. There's some things we've learned about with SharePoint, so some different ways that we can basically change your account, the guest account, and add you in a certain way that we've had a lot of success with, like 99% of people who, maybe not 99%, but the vast majority of people. So that's probably the best way to ask to get to it right now. You can also, can I put this link in the chat? Is there a chat? I see the Q&A. I don't think there's a chat in the meeting, but if you come to any page in the development guide, so if you get a link from one of your coworkers or from something that we sent out and you don't have access, you can press that request access button. And what that's going to do is it's going to send an email to me and Carl Berg and some others in our unit. And instead of just approving you to that page, what we do is we go into the site and create your account in a different way. And you'll get an email from Microsoft for some additional things that you have to do. But so that's the other option, is to just go to the site and hit request access and we'll deal with it. But engineering support training at michigan.gov, that's probably what I would recommend to do.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Is there always going to be that two-step authentication to get into SharePoint?
That's for now, yes, there is. So you'll either, when you get to the site, you'll either have to use Authenticator, which is the Microsoft app. If you don't have Authenticator, you can have it send a text to your cell phone, basically, and you punch in the code. Right now, yes, there's nothing we can do about that, but we can, we're still working with kind of our IT side to figure out different options. So I don't know if that's going to change, but for now, yeah, it'll be there.
Okay.
It even happens to MDOT employees if you're not on the state's network. Right now I am, but like if I'm working from home, I get the authenticator too, and it is annoying. So I understand that for sure.
Okay. Yeah, then it kicks you out after so long.
It doesn't kick me out. I have heard that from some consultants that it does do that. But yeah, sometimes if I'm navigating around to different pages, it's like it'll keep asking me, and it's a little bit cumbersome. But yeah.
Okay. David has his hand up. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I think it does kick me out too. It seems like it kicks, I find, as a lot of people out after like 5 minutes of inactivity.
Yeah.
It's the same thing most banking sites do. It's like you're inactive for 5 minutes, it boots you. That is kind of the most irritating thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good to know. I know I feel bad about this SharePoint stuff for consultants because well, it hasn't been the most smooth, I would say, but for us in terms of managing content, and it's just so much easier for us. So it's kind of a catch-22.
Michelle had one. Go ahead, Michelle. Hold on, I don't hear you.
Oh, I think I forgot to lower my hand.
There you go. Okay, so you don't have a question? Okay.
Already answered.
All right. Any other questions? This is a pretty big thing with RID, and it's got to be more questions out there.
Yeah, if there's not, you can continue to use the chat. There was one more thing I wanted to show, not really related to RID, but just kind of a different topic that is more related to project wise. But
I got a question, Luke. In general, I know when we first started these submitting models and all that, and about 4 or 5 years ago at ACEC, we had a session with the contractors, and Basically, the contractor said, we never use any of the consultants models because they're so poor and they do their own. Has that been changing? Has the consultants been delivering better models now? Or the contractors using them?
I think in general, yes. So MDOT has a group, the Digital Delivery Work Group, which includes MDOT, ACEC, and contractors. And that's where a lot of the decisions get made as far as what's required for RID and common issues. And we talk about a lot of different things around digital delivery and 3D models, but a lot of the RID guidance has come out of those meetings. And it kind of depends on the contractor. I would say certainly they definitely look at all of your RID and they do use it, maybe not directly, but in a lot of cases for like if they're going to be using machine grading, they will create their own independent model, but they will still bring in the design model to compare it to and find any differences and make sure that what they did was for the design intent. And I haven't gotten a lot of clarity on why they do it that way rather than using the model directly. I think part of it is just because it is reference information, and so there's not I guess as much confidence with using it directly. If something does go wrong, you know, there's a big disclaimer on the RID page that says you know, you can't submit a claim for this data if you use it and it's bad. So they do definitely use it. I've heard from one earthwork contractor in particular who has said that there have been projects where they had good design models, and for the subsurface, for you know the earth moving activities, the tolerances are pretty big, and so it doesn't have to be, you know, it's not the same as the tolerances you need for paving, right? And so there have been instances where they have literally just taken the design files and uploaded it right to their machines. So
okay. All right. And I just want to reiterate one thing too. You said, I think I'm the one who asked you this question multiple times, but you stated that we do not need bottom line string files for mill and fill jobs, but that even includes where you're correcting the slope, right? Because that's not okay.
Yep. If yeah, subsurface is really only needed for full recons. Yeah,
okay.
mill and fill jobs, you don't need it.
All right. Any other questions? Now's the time. We got the expert online.
Alan said to come work for MDOT. If
Yeah.
you want better access to the SharePoint site.
All right.
All right. So I do have one quick thing regarding project-wise, and probably we'll have more guidance out there in the future. But one of the things that we struggle with at MDOT is specifically with consultant design projects when there's real estate involved, is making sure that our real estate techs, I have the most up-to-date information from consultants. And a lot of times what happens now is consultants will upload all of their design files to ProjectWise. Real estate's happy, they have their files and they're working away on their exhibits. And then something changes with the base files. And so the designer will upload a new file to ProjectWise, and then the real estate tech goes into their files and the reference is broken. And so they got to go and reattach the new file. And it's kind of this endless process. I mean, we all know how much things change. You know, you're constantly making changes to your base files on a project, and having the most up-to-date information can be tricky. But there is a way using ProjectWise where you can re-import files and not break any references. And so not directly related to RID, but it might come in handy for some other things. So I just wanted to quickly show that process. On my desktop, I have two folders. One is called Manage Copies, and one is called Consultant Server. So you can pretend that this is your server where you're working if you're not working on our ProjectWise system. if you are working on our project wise, really, that's just what we prefer. So thank you to consultants that do their designs out of MDOT's project wise. But so here in my consultant server, I have some base files that I want to upload into project wise, but they already exist in project wise. So if I come drag project wise over, these same D files here, I need to update, but I don't just want to delete it and add a new file in, because then that's going to break any references to other files. And so there is a way that we can export a managed copy here and then update this file while keeping, as project wise is not responding, it's lunchtime. We'll see how this goes. Yeah, there we go. So when you make a reference in project-wise, this is just a little helpful tip. Every file in project-wise has this object GUID, G-U-I-D. This is a unique number that never changes no matter where you move this file to. And that's how Open Roads keeps tracks of reference files. It goes to this GUID. And as long as you don't delete this file, I can move this file to a completely different job number and all of my references will still stay intact because it remembers this unique number. And so we kind of need to trick project-wise here. I want to update all of these D files. I can right click and export to a managed copy. So we want to export. You can see locks the file. Changes can be re-imported. I'm going to export this to my desktop in my managed, what did I call it? Managed copies. You're going to see the icon here change on project-wise. We'll finish. So these have the little floppy disk next to it. That means I have it. I have a managed copy exported. So these will be read-only right now. If somebody tries to open them, the real files where you do your editing is here in my managed copies. And what we can do is we can go to your consultant server, copy these files, the updated files, to your managed copy folder, replace all the files in the destination. Now these files are updated. And then over in project-wise, we can right click and update the server copy. This is going to look to wherever I exported out my managed copies, and it's going to update them here. Then I think I'm missing something here. I just updated them, so now I can free them, I guess. And this little floppy disk icon will go away. And now they're updated from my consultant server to project-wise, and all of the references will stay intact. So we don't have this process documented anywhere. So I would say reach out to MDOT CAD support if you are working on a project with real estate and you don't want to break all of their reference files. and we can walk you through this again. But we will have I think over the course of this year, more of a documented process for how that should work. But this was something actually that I just learned from my boss actually, and I thought it would be good to get the information out there at this webinar while we have the platform. So
yeah, it's great. Luke, John has a question about profile annotation.
When annotation is applied from the workspace settings,
so he just needs to hit that toggle, right? So it'll keep your text that you move in memory.
Well, I guess to answer the question, is there a best practice to update profile annotation? No, there's not, but at least not that I can remember that we've prepared. My understanding was that with Open Roads 10.12, you could copy annotations and they would retain their intelligence so that you wouldn't have to re-annotate it. I'm not sure what would happen if you removed all of the annotations and re-annotated it, if they would all come back in. But once you annotate it once, it should stay, the annotation should stay dynamic and actually be reading that profile. So even if you were to do something like change the grade or change the length of the curve, the annotation should update and remember their position so that you don't have to do so much cleanup work. So I guess I don't have a good answer for you, but if anybody wants to have like a 10-minute or 15-minute call with me or someone else from engineering support and show what it is that you're seeing, we might be able to provide a best practice for something like that.
Can you show us where that toggle is, Luke?
Let me go ahead and make an alignment and profile here. I'll just do this in 2D in the plan view. There shouldn't be a toggle that you actually have to check. It's just when you move it, it remembers, unless there might be something that you're thinking of that I'm missing.
I thought there was a toggle to maintain the text when you move it.
Yeah, there's some different options, but it should change it automatically. Let me annotate this thing. So here are my properties, for instance, this start station. It is civil annotation text. And if I look at the location here is default. So there's some different options here for relative and fixed. But let's say this bearing, for instance, I want it to show up on another sheet. So I copy it and move it to that other sheet. This has now changed to relative. And if I change the bearing, it should, so it's 7649. Now it is 7646. So it did update and it remembered its relative position without me changing anything. And I would think in profile view, it should work the same way, but I could be mistaken. But if we remove all the annotation and then re-annotate it, then obviously it's not going to remember that that other one was here. So whatever you can do to avoid removing element annotations, I guess, is the best practice. But I'm not sure. There might be something that I'm not thinking of or that I'm missing.
Okay. I have a question about a new file for RID. The real estate file with the prefix RE.
Yeah.
The information says it's for real estate, MDOT real estate people only. Does that mean that they're the only ones who are going to create that file, or will there be situations where the consultant will create that file?
For now, it'll be real estate that creates that file, and what they use that file for is for basically drawing in parcel information for their exhibits. I suppose I don't even know if we would really need it for RID purposes, because it's mostly for going out and acquiring the properties. So well, I guess we would still want it, I suppose, but what goes in there is like the parcel boxes, the parcel identifiers, the and the parcel boundary that might not have been picked up from the original survey. I guess more to come on that. We have kind of a subgroup at MDOT that is working on having a more documented process for specific to the CAD work. So how the designer is involved, what is the responsibility of the real estate tech, what is the responsibility of the surveyor, and having a more documented process for that. So still probably a few months away from having that, but yes, the intent for the RE-parcel file is that it's the real estate, MDOT real estate, that kind of owns that file and manages everything in it.
That's what I was wondering because I did a RID review recently where the consultant had that RE file in their RID documents, and I didn't know if they created that or MDOT created that file.
Yeah.
Okay. David, you got a question? I think if you just unmute yourself, you should be good.
Yeah, half the time, I mean, does it have to be separate or is it just for additional Luke? Half the time that stuff just goes into a right-of-way DGN. We just put it in with our right-of-way since all the parcels are all its own levels anyway.
Yeah, so that RE parcel file is really in our real estate process. What happens is the real estate technicians will make a drawing like specific for a property owner so that our real estate agents can go out and, you know, talk specifically about one property. And so depending on the project, it might not even be something that comes back into your to your design files, but it might be. I don't know. Hopefully we'll be able to clear up the process a little more with kind of this working group that we have at MDOT trying to document what's required. We did have a good question or a good observation in the Q&A about the managed copy. Somebody asked, is this functionally different than checking the files out, replacing them in your CPWise folder, and then checking them back in? It's the exact same thing. So that would work just as well as what I just did with the managed copy.
So then Jeff had a question above that.
Would that work for replacing a PQS file and keeping the column quantity? I don't know about that one, Jeff. I would have to try that. I think for Excel links to DGN, I think it looks at this specifically the file name. So as long as the file name doesn't change, it should work. But I'm not 100% sure. That's a good question. The question was related to keeping links intact if you have a new PQS somewhere and you want to use that one instead, but keep the links intact. I don't know.
Okay. Good questions. Anybody else? Now's your chance. If not, again, if anybody out there is willing to present a webinar, please let us know. You can email me or if you remember that email address, glbugmichigan@gmail.com. Send us an email through there, but we'd appreciate any help we can get. We're looking for people to present webinars. So it doesn't have to be you, it could be somebody in your firm. Just get the word out. If they're willing to do it, let us know. That'll be much appreciative. Luke, thanks a lot for this series on the RID. It was really helpful. Hopefully shed some light on this whole RID process to everybody on the group here. So that's been a big help. Thanks for that. And if there's no other questions, do you have anything else you need to say, Luke?
No, I think I'm all good.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. I'll send an email out for our next webinar if I can find one. It'll be in a couple months. So thanks for joining, and we will see you later.